What's up, my black geniuses? How's everybody doing today? Happy Sunday. Hope everybody's good from the Thanksgiving holiday. If you celebrate, if you don't, still hope you're all good. Hopefully everybody didn't overeat and overdrink. Still in that food comatose, but we are here as promised every Sunday at 7 p.m. to talk about black issues as it relates to wealth and the black community. So this week we are doing part 2 of Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. Again, part 2 of Dr. Claude Anderson. This is a great book. And the official title of the book is Powernomics, the National Plan to Empower Black America. So hopefully everybody got their book. They ordered it from a black bookstore or directly from Dr. Claude Anderson's website itself, and we can dive right into it. What's up, Blackwell team? How's everybody doing today?
All right, man. Hey.
What's up, beloved?
Good. Hi.
Courtney, I see you got tea over there. You good?
Do I have tea? No. I have coffee. This is bulletproof coffee. I have not gotten, as you guys know, I am keto. I have not gotten all of my fats in for the day. So I had to do a late night grab of coffee.
So is that spiked coffee or just regular coffee?
I mean, it depends on what you call spiked. It has
you know what spiked
is. It has vanilla BCG. It also has heavy whipping cream.
Did you say CBD? You got some CBD in there?
No, MCT.
Oh, THC. Oh, you got some THC in there?
No.
I mean, listen, you are the weed queen, right? You dominate marijuana in this chapter. So, I wouldn't be surprised. Weed is legal now, especially in Jersey. So, all right, everybody. Again, today is the Powernomics, the national plan to empower Black America. All right. So we are reading from chapters 5, 6, and 7. So everybody turn to 5, 6, and 7. And before we go into that, we're going to do, our normal thing. We're going to do our BOB of the week, our Black owned business of the week, who Malik Carter is going to be presenting that for us. So Malik, tell us about this business you got here. Coloring pens?
Yep, I'm looking it up right now. So coloring pens, man. I actually came across this business today, man. This young lady, she designs and sells pens. And here's Uggs. They have on a T-shirt, like really cool and quirky items. And her name is Essence Hayes. And she even has an area of her site where you can design your own pens. And she also teaching people how to make pens, but like I said, all these cool and quirky pens for your luggage, your clothing, your backpack, your denim jacket, all of those things, man. But I love her style, I love her site, very original, very creative, and another way to show people, man, it's ways to make money out here. And as the great Negro poet Cameron Giles said, if you can't get paid and the earth is big, you worthless
kid. You worthless kid.
Like, listen, there's a lot of ways to make money out here, and she's showing that, being innovative and creative, she created a brilliant business that I love, and I support.
So it looks like she's been featured on HBO, BuzzFeed, The Huffington Post, Crown, and Man Repeller. So that's pretty dope. I mean, Malik, it might look like we can go here and get us some Black World Project pens. What do you think?
I think we should actually go there and get some Black World Project pens.
Okay. All right. Cool beans. All right. Well, let's check in with our folks. All right, y'all. Y'all know the drill. Check in where you're checking in from, what your name is, and holla at us. All right. So Don Johnson said, "Good brother Don, how you doing?"
Salute, Don. What's going on?
Thanks for the share, Don. We appreciate that. Quick reminder, everybody, please share this out with anybody who's interested in elevating Black culture financially and through wealth. All right. Kyron, what's up, brother? How you doing? Welcome.
What's going on?
You.
Willard's in the house. What's up, Willard?
Willard, what's up, brother?
Willard not out working on no property on a Sunday. I know he stay hustling. Monica, good evening, Monica. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, what's going on, Monica?
Okay.
Katisa, how you doing, Katisa?
Yeah.
Hey, Jimmy. Jimmy and Corey, thank you for the class.
No doubt. You got it.
Y'all out here putting in that hard work. That's
what's up.
All right, y'all. So who want to go first?
Hey, look, before we start, I want to ask, did anybody in the group see the beautiful vegan Thanksgiving my wife prepared for me?
I saw it on the gram.
You got
I did
cauliflower, right?
The cauliflower
Yep,
turkey,
yep.
How was it?
No, listen,
It
the
looked
food
good.
was excellent. The only problem is the leftovers don't hit the same. That's the only. But no, listen. But that night, no, listen. Everything was really, really good, man. Really good vegan Thanksgiving.
Well, that's interesting because I got a question for the audience. Is anybody else in the audience vegan? How was your Thanksgiving? What did you have? And did you spend it with family or were you alone? Because I know this Thanksgiving was probably more challenging than any other Thanksgiving we've ever had before.
Oh yeah,
It was definitely tough.
Yeah.
At least for us, you know, you could talk to the indigenous. They might disagree with you.
Facts.
Right?
Good
point. That's an excellent point.
Excellent point. All right, y'all. Well, let's start this off. Who wants to go first with tackling their points for the book? Remember, we're doing 2 points per chapter. Let's start off with chapter 5. So what you got?
I'll start it off. So chapter 5, and I'll be very brief because I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk, is about group economics. So a couple of notes that I took here, because yes, I did take notes because our teacher Courtney said we better have notes and be prepared. So I took that to be serious. So and the one thing I'll say is this, man. Overall, those of us that know better have to do better, but also reach back. So when I think of group economics, a lot of things come to mind. But one of the things he talks about is capitalizing on needs and desires, creating an alternative economy, and dominating where we spend our money. So those are the things that stood out to me in terms of dominating where we spend our money. So looking at our folks, where our money is spent, and investing in that infrastructure there, and trying to vertically integrate. But also just spending with each other. And one of the things that I wrote down was doing business with each other when it's not convenient. So a lot of us will do business with Black-owned businesses when it's convenient. But what about when it's not convenient? I know Kamari read the book about the young lady who tried to spend with Black-owned businesses for like a year. Yeah. And one of the things she talks about is the difficulty with like supermarkets and gas stations and how far she had to travel to, kind of practice group economics. And it's just difficult. So a lot of times we settle for convenience, but if we understand what one of our major problems are overall, we have to do it when it's not convenient. So speaking of that, by the way, before I pass on to the next person, group economics, I want you guys to see I'm wearing a shirt by a black designer. You know what I'm saying? I got a black designer on, you know what I'm saying? So we out here practicing group economics. I just gotta point it out real fast. You know what I'm saying? So that's group economics right there, man. So I'm actually practicing what we preach right now. So just wanted to point that out. But yeah, so I'll leave it at that so we can have a conversation. But I think that those of us that know better have to do better and reach back, because a lot of us know what the problems are. We know we should be practicing group economics, but we can't just talk about it. We have to do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, Malik, you up next. How you feel about this thing here?
Yeah, so group economics in my space is a little more difficult because, in real estate, people have to have a certain level of money, right? So I do practice some group economics, but you have to have kind of like the same mindset. Like each individual have to know going in what the exit strategy is, at least in this business. So it kind of makes it like a little tough. But I do some economics. But I want to say this, man. I think I've mentioned it on this podcast before, but when I think of group economics, I think of Raylicious. For those that don't know Raylicious is a brand. It's a Hispanic brand. Philadelphia, probably in most areas now, the Hispanics took over the convenience store, even from the Koreans. The Hispanics took it over, whether they're Puerto Rican or Dominican, right? And they now have a brand that they put in all of their shelves. They have salty snacks, they have sweets, they have everything else, and they have Puerto Rican and Dominican distributors that distribute those things. They buy things in bulk, right? These things, and they take over like every corner. But we in Philadelphia, we had Fam Juice, and Fam Juice was around for less than 2 years and couldn't make it, and they had really good distribution in all the stores. So it's like what was the problem? Is it that as a community we didn't support FAMJUs, or was it the business? But when I think of group economics, I think what they were able to do was such a small budget and really come and take over every neighborhood in the city. But we'll talk more about what we can do later on in the show. I just want to point. I think Ray Licious is a huge example of one of the things that we should be doing as a community with group economics.
Okay, Tracy, what you got on this? What do you think?
So I took some notes myself because there's so many gems in this conversation, especially with group economics. One of the things that I did want to share, and I actually popped that information in our little chat too, that you can probably share on the screen as well. I'm involved in a lot of projects that are doing and working towards more group economics conversations. Um, One of them recently being what was considered more like a crowd fund. Um, and in a group economic setting, the thought process is we all have a goal. We all want to be able to create change, create equitable development in our communities, and have a say on what's being built and who these projects serve, as well as being able to put them into communities that are what are considered in the tax code as opportunity zones. This was exactly what Dr. Claude was talking about. This project actually now is fully funded for crowd fund money, $751,000 brought up to be able to put together the Shardswood project that was led by Mosaic Development Partners in Philadelphia. And it's a perfect shining example of what we can all do with a little bit of money that we have that can be able to put together a huge project that can create some large change. It's basically a $230,000, 230 square foot mixed use project for low income community, and created a bunch of different mixed use projects for housing, 55 plus community, a supermarket in a food desert of an area, green public space, and job creation and quality services. And it was all done through crowdfund. So to me, that is how powerful group economics is, and putting to use some of the principles that power economics and Dr. Claude is talking about. So I just wanted to bring an example to the table.
Okay, all right. Was there any other points in chapter 5 you thought that were worthy to bring the topic or that caught your interest, Tracy?
Some of the other conversations I liked and I felt like were important were that Blacks make up 50% of the prison population. And we need to dominate the criminal justice system just on that premise alone. And Black businesses should dominate the prison population, and prisoners contract for construction, management, suppliers, and professional services to prison. Like that one concept alone was like,
It's funny. I actually saw. I want to say no. I was going to say EYL. It wasn't EYL. It was David Sands' Social Proof podcast, where they actually just talked about the same thing. And I actually years ago, Kenny Gamble said the same thing as well. So I'm not surprised by that, and I actually agree with it. As long as we do it ethically and integrally, and I think that's going to be a hard thing. But yeah, I think we should try to control everywhere that our people are and try to make sure they get proper treatment.
I agree. I just feel like when you start talking about ethically and all of that stuff, can't be any worse than what's already being done.
True. I yield that point. I yield that point. Corey, what you got on this?
Really, he makes a few points that I want to talk about, and so I marked it in my book because I wanted to read it. He said, throughout history, nearly everyone except Black people has seen wealth in the race. I disagree with that point. because you got to define history. But anyway, black people have responded by, huh?
I'll go into that. I'm interested.
Well, I mean, because if you really want to go back into history, we are the riches of the world. We built everything that the world uses to create wealth. And all of the land where all of the natural resources where wealth is created are places where brown people live. So I disagree with that point outright. Like, I think that shit is just false. But his point is not lost.
I think he's talking about Black Americans.
Mhm.
I know. That's why but he just said throughout history, nearly everyone except black people. And I disagreed with that because he didn't specify. But anyway, I'm not going to lose the point because, whatever. Yeah. Black people have responded by enriching every other group but themselves. And it's now time for black people to create wealth for themselves. So that's the premise where he started at, right? And so where he went with it though is that he said the secret to creating wealth is to own and control the resources. And that's period. That's it. You have to own and control, and then you have to produce. That's how you build wealth, right? So that's the first thing that he said that I totally agree with and that we need to get on point doing. The second thing that he was talking about is that he said those who don't understand or who pretend not to understand how wealth is built give up their power to build wealth. Mm-hmm. That's right there is a crazy powerful statement because it's true, and it's why we're so far behind in building wealth. Because black people act like they don't know what the steps to building wealth are. I don't really like taking it there, but white people built wealth by taking the resources that they needed to build the wealth. They took it. They didn't ask for it. And so if they took it, they're not giving it back, but they're not gonna give it back because we asked. So if we want it, we're gonna have to go get it. So that's the other point that he's talking about. And so he said, with that being the backdrop, how should we build wealth in this economy? So, he took it from the beginning where he said, everybody understands how to build wealth except for black people, supposedly. Then he said, look, the keys to building wealth are controlling resources, controlling production. And then he said, if you fail to understand that, or you act like you don't understand it, you have no chance. You gave up your power. And then he says, all right, so now what are we going to do? And then he proceeds to give out the steps of what to do. So, I applaud Dr. Claude, even though, because of the time period and when the book was written, some of the stuff that he was talking about, we've evolved into a different space. But what he said was dead on because the foundation it was built on is dead on. So that's what I mean.
Gotcha. Appreciate that, Corey. Courtney, what you got on this?
So I think Jimmy, Corey, and Tracy hit a lot of the points that I wanted to talk about, but I think the economic action step on page 135 that's covered in terms of talking about focusing on wealth building and restoring the economic intent of the original civil rights laws. I think that is so important because he talks about in the first few chapters of the book how a lot of the Black agenda or the agenda that was supposed to be set out for the emancipated slaves or the formerly enslaved people were never really helped us. So there were two periods of civil rights. You had your right after the Civil War, where we had the Reconstruction period, and then we had the period of we'll say 1950s to 1960s, and I would probably even venture to say the 1920s because that's when the Supreme Court cases were percolating up, kind of to get us to the point of Brown versus the Board of Education, which overturned Plessy versus Ferguson, which was a 1896 case, the separate but equal case. That's the known, no one knows, not a lot of people know it by name, but it's called it's Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896, separate but equal. And then Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, I forgot the full name, but that's a 1954 case, which overturned separate but equal. And they said, no, this is unconstitutional. But again, the whole point of civil rights was actually to help the emancipated slaves. And he says here, he said, the civil rights in the United States isn't what it used to be, nor does it reflect the original laws and precedents. Civil rights was first used at the close of the Civil War. It referred to freedom and economic rights for Black slaves as ratified in the Civil Rights Laws of 1865 and 1866. And then he goes about talking about the movement in the 1960s and how it helped minorities, and it really stripped us of the economic rights and freedoms that we were supposed to have, that were supposed to be given to us, that were never. It was kind of like a check that was never cashed. And and actually it was cash. It was insufficient funds. And he talks about that, and that's kind of what he was talking. That's kind of his point the whole entire time, is that we've never gotten what we actually were entitled to way back when. And then when the kind of second, wave of civil rights, we still never got what we were entitled to. So I would really like us to go back in the law and really fix everybody gets upset when we talk about reparations, but at the end of the day is that we had 400 years of you stripping our community of its labor, which was a resource, and you actually use that to enrich another community. Yeah, we should be paid for that. I mean, anybody else, if you work, just think about it, if you worked for Walmart and you never got paid, you would want to sue to actually get the money that you were entitled to, because they basically extracted a resource from you without paying for it. So I really love that idea, because a lot of people don't talk about it that way, because we talk about civil rights and we're like we're holding hands and singing Kumbaya, and we end up helping everybody else instead of just ourselves. And then when we actually come back to the idea of, hey, we actually need something for Black people, everybody kind of is like, y'all got enough. And we haven't gotten what we were supposed to. So the next thing is that the brain drain. Because what I have noticed is that every time we talk about our parents have always said, oh, go to school, get a good job, whatever. But he talks about how 98% of Black people are employed by white businesses. And that's kind of been the whole time that we've been going on throughout our history in the United States, is that even when we were working as domestics, we were in the white household, we were bringing their kids, we were rearing their kids, we were feeding their kids. What happened to us? Like, who was taking care of our children? And then we also look at it now as like, who's taking care of our businesses? Who's kind of helping our economic cycle if all we're doing is running off to white businesses? So I thought those were the two things. If we can kind of make sure that we keep our intellectual capital in the community, and then we also focus on getting what legally is supposed to be ours back to the original intent of the original civil rights laws, I think that gets us a lot further along.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Well, I'm gonna take this one, y'all. Page 142, economic action step number 7. Now, this one's kind of a cheat code for me, but it just really rung true when I read it. But I'm talking about it all the time. Everybody here talks about it. Jimmy actually just talked about it too. But economic action step number 7 is stop the capital drain out of Black communities. In other words, buy Black and sell to anyone else. Right. So he says Black America has a major problem. The flight of its disposable income into the pockets of racial, ethnic, and religious groups around the world. Black people have enriched every group, Black people have enriched every group except themselves, without a sense of community and a vertical chain of obligation, and no guidelines for how they should spend their money. No product or business loyalty in the marketplace. That right there really hit me. No product or business loyalty in the marketplace, right? So we'll go to anybody else, regardless of the situation, and we won't have any kind of loyalty to Black businesses first. And as Courtney just said, the majority of our employment for the Black community goes to white corporations, and particularly the government. But however, what would it be like if we spent our own money with our own businesses? How could that turn around and reverse employment trends in the Black community? Instead of going to white companies, we could spend our money with Black businesses and then hire more of our own people. But I don't think people really get it. And then I'll also say, it's also kind of not terminalized, but kind of referred to as circulation of the Black dollar. You'll hear people talk about how the Black dollar only circulates 6 hours in our community. Now, no one can really prove that. That's been proven to not be true. But the idea of it, that once we get a dollar, I go spend it with Jimmy. Jimmy spends it with Malik. Malik spends it with Corey. Corey spends it with Courtney. Courtney then spends it with Tracy. Is still very powerful, whether we can prove that academically or not. So I just wanted to read that and go over that, because again, I still feel that's very powerful. Billie Holiday, one of my favorite songs of hers, says, "God bless a child who's got his own." And sadly, we take what is our own and we give it to everybody else. Again, what Jimmy said, what Courtney just said, and everybody else. So when we talked about culture, what was it, two episodes ago? That's part of our culture now, right? I think we have to go back and look at that and ask ourselves, why do we pay everybody else first except ourselves?
And you know what burns me up, man. What burns me up more than anything else, I promise you, is seeing a Korean barbershop for the black people. I get like, yo, why are you at that bird? Listen, it's a black barber on every corner. And all the barbershops. I want Mr. Kim barbershop.
I got to push back on that or a question.
I got to make a point about that. But
go ahead.
No, I was going to say a couple of things real fast. One is that to Corey's point, I was saying he's talking about Black America. In the very beginning of the book, he says that when he says blacks, he's speaking specifically about Black America. In fact, the book is the National Plan to Empower Black America. And he also says that I'm including myself when I say this, right? Preface that so to sound ADOS, but that's what he actually said, that he wasn't speaking historically about our people. He's talking specifically about Black America. But to Malik's point, what bothers me is and you can relate to this because it's closer to what we do, is when I see folks not using Black real estate agents. That bothers me because that's an industry in which we have representation. So there's a lot of industries in which we just don't have representation. But when you have something that we have a lot of representation and qualified and good people in, and I say this to a lot of our builders and developers. I've gotten arguments with real estate guys who are also developers because they hire white agents. And they say, I want the best person. I said, listen, this is something that we have great folks in. How could you not hire a Black agent, right? So it's one thing if we're talking about going to a Black-owned gas station, because I don't know of one in the area. That's one thing, right? But it's different when you talk about not hiring a Black real estate agent. There's no excuse for that. So I think that has to be said. And the last point I want to make real fast. No, the last point I just want to make real fast. And so first I want to say, if my productivity is down, we have to blame Malik because I've been in Chatty House the last couple of days and can't get out. But I was having a conversation. I was having a conversation in Chatty House earlier, and we talked about
hiring. If everybody doesn't know what Chatty House is, he's talking about Clubhouse, y'all.
Yeah, the Clubhouse app. So Malik got me on there, and now I can't stop. I've been on there literally for 48 hours straight, just in conversations. But one of the conversations we were talking about hiring our own, and just from personal experience. So a friend of my wife was telling us that her son, went into the trades of carpentry and all that kind of stuff. We always talk about, putting the youth in trades. But one of the issues he had when he finished school, internships. All the internships, no one that looked like him were offering internships. Is everybody else offering internships? But I'm sitting there thinking as he's hearing the story, I'm like, there's so many, Black contractors, plumbers, electricians, but we have to make sure we're offering opportunities to the next generation, which is all part of group economics to me, which is why I said those of us that know better have to do better. Because we have to make sure we're offering opportunities to the next generation and we're reaching back with intent. We have to be intentional about it.
Okay, so I want to go back to something real quick, but before I do that, let's check in with everybody.
Here. Just throwing that out there with what he said. I'm with him. Just saying.
Dwight says hello. What's up, Dwight? How you doing?
Yo, what's up, Dwight?
Willard says he's working, but he's wearing an earbud, so he's got us tuned in. I appreciate that, Willard. Because I was solo and loved it. My immediate family flew to Florida and not ready to go on anyone's plane. I know that's right. She's talking about her Thanksgiving holiday. All right, Tamika says, hey, Kings and Queens. How you doing, Tamika? Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, Tamika.
All right, so this was the point I wanted to go back to, and this was for Malik, because Malik, you said it's kind of hard to practice group economics in real estate, and Jimmy just chimed in on that as well. Tracy's here, Malik's here, so talk about that a little bit more, Malik. What did you mean by that? Because Karan says, big homie, Malik, I mean, for real estate, it could be hiring Black contractors and or renting to Black tenants, right? So expound on that point, and then everybody else chime in on that, please.
So when I was talking about group economics, I was thinking in a way of investing, not necessarily the trades. Now we do struggle in the trades because we don't have enough quality tradesmen. right now, what you do have, you have some people that know how to do work that all of a sudden want to be contractors, and that ain't the same. And so I kind of do struggle with them, but I will say this, man, everybody in my projects is a black subcontractor, except my I call him black, but they might not think it, but a Puerto Rican dude put my floors down. But other than that, my HVAC guys black, electrician black. I got got my Puerto Rican electrician. I think he black too, whether he admits it or not. You know, I have a tile guy black. My railing guy is black. The roofers were Mexican. But other than that, everybody else, I try my best. I do my best to only hire black contractors and black subcontractors. And even my demo guys are black. And to the point where I try to get them to hire on. Actually, my last demo job, I paid him extra money to hire on two kids. It didn't pan out. They came one day, they come the other day. But either way, it was the point of trying to help them get to the business. So that's what I meant. But otherwise, yeah, all my subcontractors are black. I'm more like 90% black.
Okay.
That's being intentional.
Right. That's I got a question for the audience real quick before we get going. Do you consider Puerto Ricans black? Let me know, because I do see a large majority of people that say black people are only people in the U.S. So I'm really interested in what y'all say. So make sure y'all throw that in the chat. And while we're between comments, be sure to share this out with anybody else who's interested in black wealth and elevating your knowledge and practice of black wealth as well. All right, so I think we got that cleared up.
If they part of the terror squad.
I quit you today.
All right. So again, I want to push back real quick on, not push back, but just add this to the conversation. So Reg CF is something that Mosaic just did, right, Tracy? Yep. And so Malik said from an investment standpoint, it's hard to kind of get group economics, but Reg CF can allow for that if structured properly. Is that correct? So we can actually have more Reg CF projects going on if we organize and then take pennies and then turn them into dollars, because you could take $1 from here, $1 from there. We get 1 million people with $1, and that's $1 million project. Now, that's just hypothetical, y'all. Nobody wants to manage a project with 1 million people. That would be an administrative nightmare.
But that's what I was saying about the example I put up. It's not hypothetical. It's being done. And it is an example of a project that was done, and it might have had, I don't even know if they had the count on the website of how many people participated, but the minimum amount of investment was $1,500, and they raised $751,000. And it was all from the website, small change, where other people are putting their projects on these websites to be able to crowdfund. And as minority-owned developers, we can model this and do this because there's already a successful example in Philadelphia that has done it.
Right. So they had about 15, excuse me, they had, what did they say? They had 54 investors. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that ranges at different levels, but you can do a lot of different things at that level, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be $1,500. It can be less. It can be more. Right. And Tracy, I was saying what's hypothetical was about the million investors. That's all.
Million. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but no, listen, I want to give a shout out to Chris Senegal in Houston. He just raised his fund closed at like one point, the maximum like what $1,070,000, but he did that on a website called Buy the Block. You know, it's a I think it's a black owned crowdfund website that he closed his fund out, and he's doing big things down in Houston. He has a bigger project coming that he's going to crowdfund for that one too. So no, it's definitely possible, and I need to look more into that. I personally don't like to take other people's money because I don't want that accountability. You know, I'd rather just use my own bread. But I might need to look into it. But no, there are some successful examples. And Tracy, I didn't even know that this project right here was crowdfunded. But we do. There's another fund not to be named that has a bad reputation right now, and that may hurt some people. Hopefully they start to give back some dividends.
See, what you did was you gave out the funds who did use the money right. So let's focus on the people who are doing the actual work. instead of the people who are doing the funny business.
Well, I was talking about some of the obstacles, right? Is
Yeah,
like,
okay, I see what you're saying.
Right, the obstacles, and so we do have to. And the problem is, like you're saying, Corey, the ones that don't, I don't know if they're doing right or not. I'm just saying, allegedly or not, I don't know if they're doing right or not, right? But what I am saying for sure is that the allegations of not being done right are being way overshadowed by the people that are actually doing real work and giving returns, great projects and work. And we don't hear as much about the great works as the, as the
because you could do 10 good things, and any person can do it take 100 good deeds to erase one bad deed. So,
but also when it comes to us, it's also different when it comes to us. We get judged by our works when a lot of other communities don't have to worry about that. And part of that is because we
everybody
don't
else get judged by the top 10%, and we get judged by the bottom 10. But
hey, listen, as a matter of fact, Quibi just lost $1 billion. They raised a fund, launched less than a year, closed it down, and they said, "Oh well, on to the next thing." It wasn't like, "Oh man, I'm not giving them my money to the white man." It was like, "Oh well, the business didn't work. I'll reinvest in something else." It wasn't like, "Oh, these white guys messed the bread up, messed the money up. I'm never investing with a white company again." As soon as
so hold on, y'all. Let's continue on and get through the rest of these chats and say hello.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so Dwight says ethnic aggressions, which was discussed in prior chapters, is key. Without it, there's no control of resources. Yeah, Corey just kind of talked about that, right? I mean, either you want to take it or you want to buy it. I think a lot of times, many of our previous organizations that really talked about our stuff kind of came from a level or place of entitlement. By saying they want somebody to give them something or the government to give them something. Now, I'm not saying that it's not justified, but at this stage, I think we have to be on the time of we got to buy it or we got to be able to take it. And we know we can't take anything because we don't have the military might to do that. What do y'all think about this comment? Any other thoughts, comments, concerns?
Ethno-aggression basically means to aggregate resources, right? So my thing is, we don't have those things that we talk about because we haven't aggregated and put those things together for ourselves. We have individual people who do this, right? Who like, my thing is, you don't own anything you can't protect, right? So you don't own your rights because you can't protect them. They're not rights if you can't protect them. If somebody has to give it to you and you can't protect it, it's not a right. So I say the same thing about property. If you have a property and you can't protect it, it's not yours. It belongs to the person who it belongs to the person who wants to take it until at the point they decide to take it from you if you can't protect it. And so that's how our oppressor thinks. And so that's how we have to understand what we're dealing with, because that's their mindset. You don't own anything you can't protect.
I agree. All right, so Kahan says, "What's up, Kahan? Thanks for joining us. I tried to organize folks just to attack that, even without a focus on wealth building. The practice of group economics to reduce collective debt was lost in translation." Kahan, I'm interested. Like, what was your thought behind that? Hey, Tiffany, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Fighting, don't give up.
Tiffany's laughing at us. All right, Wayne Terry says, "Not those $7 chop shops." Talking about those
the Koreans in the hood, man.
Andre Andrews, what's up, Andre? How you doing? Welcome.
What's going on, Andre?
Says we on fire today.
What's up, bro? What's up, Andre?
All right, so Prince Mallory says, "I blame the Black Masons. They have more parties in the architecture and business meetings."
Hi. Oh, hi. Oh,
okay,
let me go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, put that comment back up.
All right, go ahead. I got you.
Put the comment back up. So let's be very clear about what Black Masons are. They have more. The comment is they have more parties than architecture and business meeting. A Black Mason, if you're talking about the social organization or the, I guess, lack of a better term, the fraternal organization, I'll be very clear, is not about building buildings. They have not been about building buildings in the last 100 years. Now, do they lay cornerstones? Absolutely, but they don't build buildings. So let's be very clear. And in terms of business meetings, they do have business meetings. You must not be one. And I think it's very important that we actually keep our comments of things that we don't know about to ourselves. And I think at the end of the day, I'm a third generation Prince Hall Masonic family. So I'm going to be very clear about that. So again, I think it's very important is that could all the fraternal organizations do a lot more in the community and be a lot more community focused? Absolutely. But to tell an organization that you blame them for all the ills of the Black community, I think that's going a little bit too far. And if that's what you're so concerned about, maybe you should join them.
All right, the commentary and opinions of our panelists are that of our opinions of the commentary.
If you want to in my inbox, please.
So, it's all good. It's all good. All right, Adrian says some Puerto Ricans are Black, some are indigenous, some are white, Spanish, and some are a mixture. Gotcha. All right, yes, I consider Puerto Ricans part of the diaspora. The Taino people of the island were Black people. All right, Karan says yes, we most certainly are Black because, believe it or not, I'm Puerto Rican. All right, shout out to the Baliquas in the building.
Hi.
I don't think it would hurt for people who are proven and have work to stand on. Okay. All right, Demetrius, how you doing? Welcome. Peace, King.
Here, what's going on, Demetrius?
Peace. Demetrius, check your text message, bro.
Check your text messages, Demetrius.
A call-in option. That was the article I posted for tomorrow.
We do need a call-in option.
We could do that at some point. We could do that at some point.
I would love callers.
Yeah.
You could take that to Chatty House.
Coming soon to a room near you.
Now,
we can actually have our own call-in option. We can definitely work on that.
We can definitely do that. I think
yes, absolutely. All right, so let's move on to chapter 6. Chapter 6. So Courtney, why don't you anchor this? Chapter 6, what you got on this?
Okay. So, I mean, what I love about chapter 6 is that how it really talks about capitalizing. But I think Tracy really covered that with the crowdfunding. So let's put this perspective in time frame. I believe this was written in 2005, I think, guys. Am I wrong with that? You look at the copyright.
2000, I believe.
Okay.
Before then, like 2000.
At that point, I'm just trying to look at the copyright, y'all. Sorry. 2001. My bad. So in 2000, this was written in 2001. He talks about even doing funding through the stock market. He's like, hey, that's really difficult. But at the time, you didn't have these options of crowdfunding. And my thing is that this has been my thought since kind of the crowdfunding thing kicked off, generally, is that if we can crowdfund death, we can certainly crowdfund life. And what I mean by that is that we can actually crowdfund the things that will bring something to our community. I'm sorry?
That's a t-shirt. That's a quotable.
Ooh, I got a quotable. Ooh.
Yeah, bookmark that.
A bookmark it tech. But I mean, so I think those are the things that I thought was really interesting is that we do, at the end of the day, we have to capitalize ourselves. No one else is going to capitalize us for us. And you can see that even when we're looking at companies publicly traded, the Black publicly traded companies on the stock market, they're significantly undercapitalized. When you look at their market cap, which is the value of the stocks times the value of per share times the number of stocks outstanding, shares outstanding, I should say, excuse me. When you look at that, you see that we're significantly under the market cap for our businesses are significantly under other companies that are similarly situated. And it's because it's a Black business. So at the end of the day, the market is not going to ever value us for the value of who we are and what we bring to the table. And there was a quote in chapter 5 that I thought was that really speaks to this particular point. It's on page 121. He said it was basically about a conversation between two children, a Black child and a white child. And the white child said, I wish I could buy you for what you think you are worth and then sell you for what I think you are worth. I can make a fortune. So he's talking about the gap between what we sell ourselves out to the market. I'm not saying, us as people, but whatever our ideas are, we always undervalue ourselves. And the market allows us to do so because they see the opportunity and they see the gap. So understanding that we have to fund ourselves and we have to kind of be the anchor of that, because when we take our gifts and talents outside of the community, we usually get shafted. So.
Gotcha. Corey, what do you got on this? What do you got for chapter 6?
Well, Courtney touched on a couple of the things that I wanted to talk about, but the thing that she didn't touch on, which is on page 183, in which he talks about building opportunities through strategic alliances, right? So basically, when I think about building opportunities through strategic alliances, I think about something like the Black Wealth Project, right? Like what we're doing. Like we all are successful, or in my case, semi-successful, and doing the things that we do. But the things that what makes us great is that we have ideas and we bring everything to the table and we don't hide nothing from one another. And so when you talk about building strategic alliances, you know, I'm talking about on a local level, right? He was talking about on a broader level where we build strategic alliances with one another and then build out, you know, that vertical integration that he talks about. But what I'm talking about is just to build strategic alliances amongst each other first, right? Let's use who and what we have to build upon and then take it out to the marketplace, and so that we all can, you know, we can all eat off of that. And so that's the place where we have to get if we're going to get to the place that we think we should be. And so I'm that's going to be my, you know, because I want to leave some meat on the bone for other people.
No, thank you, Corey. Thank you. Malik, what do you think about chapter 6? Anything jump out at you?
Yeah, so some of it's little data now, like somebody talks about is how, you know, because technology is good for white folk, it's not necessarily good for black folk. Now I will say this, we use technology like the you know, like the Cash App, even now, you know, even this chatty house, you know, like the black folk technology, we kind of took over and use it for good, but haven't really necessarily found like a way to monetize it, right? We're talking about technology in the form of music. What's the Steve's tout, you know, way to put music out that actually helps more of these entertainers become owners and keeping their intellectual property and move forward. But what I'm thinking about, just be clear, I'm still on the technology piece of the chapter, but like what I am intentional with technology. Like for instance, my my appointment making software, I use Calendly. Because people don't know that Calendly is a black owned company, right? When if I trade outside of my traditional brokerage account, I use Doe because as I covered before as a BOB of the week, Doe is a black owned company. You know, even so I try to even use like the higher level companies, and this and we're showing like people like Idris Sandu, like how he's been able to use technology to create an entire space to where younger, you know, black and brown, black people in particular, and can make a way and make a space in that technology. For those that don't know, Idris Sandu, he wrote the code for the autonomous vehicles for Google, and he wrote a lot of the code for Twitter when they started, but he wrote a lot of different code. And so I just really stuck on the technology piece because where we are in society right now, when we're moving to all technology, we say that as the culture, we move technology forward, but we do have to figure out more ways to, it helps us, we have to figure out more ways to actually monetize it to keep within the family.
All right, so hold on. I need to take a real pause real quick. Malik, you're saying Calendly is black owned?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I've used them before. But yeah, I think I will be switching back to them now. All right, well,
Yeah.
thank you for that. All right,
I had no idea.
Yeah, I had no idea. Jimmy, what do you have on chapter 6?
Okay, so in chapter 6, the notes I got here, it talks about Black Business Investment Corporation, and it made me think about the power of creating an investment group. So Corey and I, as well as Cajon, who's in the chat, as well as Willard, we all are part of a Black investment group, and we've been able to, you know, build a nice amount of capital and make moves working cooperatively. So I think, but there's room for more. It doesn't have to be just one, right? I mean, we might need a Black Wealth Project investment group, but I think it's power in that. The other thing that I thought about at going back through this chapter is when he talks about like sports and entertainment. So there's always this criticism of our community that, you know, we focus too much on sports and entertainment, and I believe it's not the fact that we focus too much there, but we don't own anything there, right? We're allowed to be the employees. A great, it's called $40 million slave.
Yep.
And it talks
William
about
Roden.
the fact that if we just focus on, yeah, William Roden, that's right, $40 million slave is an excellent book, but he talked about like not being able to acquire power in terms of ownership within these spaces that we dominate as athletes. And I thought about that in reading this chapter. And even when it comes to the music industry, we're always the talent. So we need to focus on ownership and control, which is, that permeates throughout this entire book. But and I think that is key. So it's one thing to say that, all you guys are focused on this, but if we own those spaces, and I think that's what Malik was just talking about too, even when it comes to technology and social, we make everything hot. We make Twitter hot. We make Snapchat hot. We make Facebook hot. We make Instagram hot. We don't own any of these platforms. So we still have to find a way to not only have these spaces, but to own and control these spaces. You know what I'm saying? So I was joking earlier when I was talking the power of Chatty House, and I was like, I'm like, yo, this is powerful, but we don't own this either. We need our own platform, and like Dr. Anderson says, sell to everyone. They can come on our platform, and share raisin recipes and whatnot, but we need to own the platform. So those are my thoughts from chapter 6. And I'll let you guys, go ahead further the conversation.
Listen, don't eat potato salad with raisins in it, y'all. It's not good for your skin.
It's not potato salad.
Ever.
That's not potato salad.
So
that's something else.
Tracy, what do you got on chapter 6, Tracy?
You guys kind of knocked it out of the park with chapter 6. Like, we kind of talked through a lot of those conversations with group economics and dealing with organizing together to create funding and solutions. So I'm a yield to the group on this. There's not much more else.
Can I take a look at her time real fast? I do want to point out that on page 177, where he's talking about the inner city farmers markets from produce from hydroponic facilities.
Hold on, Malik. Hold on.
I was about to say, I thought he was taking that.
No. So I don't know if Malik read this book 10 years ago, but Malik was talking about hydroponics and the city, almost the same plan where you're taking abandoned homes and you're putting hydroponics in them over 10 years ago. So I want to give Malik his due.
Listen, man. Listen, aquaponics is definitely where it's at, and I like to get back there. And listen, I'm telling you right now, you could timestamp this today. In the next several years, you're going to see way more aquaponic systems because the oceans are getting empty. We got to get our protein from somewhere, and they're going to be on dry land. And just so people can hear this, tilapia is not a frankenfish. It's a real fish. It just happens to be that you see more tilapia and catfish because you can raise them. They're disease resistant, and you can raise them in dirty water. That's the reason why those fishes are more prevalent now. They're not some kind of man-made fish. It's not that. But
yeah, but those farms, especially the ones in Southeast Asia, are a little seedy. I'll say that. I would say that.
Right.
All right. Anybody else got anything on chapter 6?
So it's cool to eat tilapia again? Because I fell for the memes. I saw it on memes, so I cut it out.
Listen. I'll say this. It's just like anything else, right? No matter it's how it's raised, right? A lot of times they feed them antibiotics and chicken shit. Like they like legit eat chicken shit. You know what I'm saying, and so you could go to a organic raised or naturally raised one. But that meat is going to cost more. Now, a company that I invest in, AQB, Aqua Bounty, you know what I'm saying? The stock's only like $4 right now, but
not investment advice.
They do a
not investment advice.
Not investment advice, nor is it the advertisements because they ain't giving
no advertisement. I'm just listen. I want everybody to know this. I'm buying it as a passion project. That's not investment advice. I don't know what's going to happen. I want to do aquaponics. I didn't do it, but they do it, so I invest in that. So, but I will say this: with that, they have genetically altered salmon to grow in half the amount of time that a traditional salmon will grow. But the way they grow it it's a clean process, but it's just genetically modified. Are you okay with that? When your food, and I'm personally am okay with it. I don't mind GMO food. I'd rather have GMO food with less pesticides than a non-GMO food with antibiotics in it. But
there's some argument there for that, but I'll leave that for a different discussion on a different day. But I'll also state that
now I'm more confused now.
It's a lot. It's a lot of
be vegan. Be vegan. Be vegan.
things, but consumption is still consumption. Be careful what you put in your body long term and what you're feeding your kids long term too, because something very, very tiny can turn into something very, very big if you eat it for every day, 365 days for 50 to 60 years. But the other point I wanted to make about aquaponics, there are a lot of HBCUs that are starting coursework on teaching our children on how to utilize, funnel, filtrate, and cultivate these systems. Please make sure you're paying attention, and please make sure that your children are understanding the new age way of how we're going to start doing farming moving into the 22nd century.
All right. Well, let me get my last point out for chapter 6, right? So this is additional industries on page 180. All right. So he talks about telecommunications and mass media, right? So he says strategy. Use Black experts to establish a national daily newspaper, a television, a radio network, and a film distribution. Now, I know we kind of have them somewhat, but just for the record, I am a member of PABJ, the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists, which is the anchor chapter, the first chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. And I feel that journalism is actually one of our key industries that's really served the Black community well over the years, going back to Ida B. Wells and W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. Many of those had publications to keep in touch with our people to kind of keep us on the same page. I don't feel that we really have that now, and it's something that we really, really need. Now, you could also say that the Blackwell Project is kind of serving in that place as well, but I think that's something we should serve or work to get to. So that was something that really jumped out at me in chapter 6 as well. All right, so let's check in with the comments real quick. Next chapter is chapter 7, y'all. So if y'all got your books, by the way, who has their book in the audience? Who's following along in the audience that has their book?
Yes, let us know.
All right, so Kahan says, yes, if we can crowdfund death, we can crowdfund life. So we got to get Courtney Richardson credit on that. Coming to a e-commerce store near you by the Blackwell Project. Y'all look out for those.
Oh.
All right, so Kahan says, Kamari, the people didn't necessarily understand investing. I focused on debt because it was a shared commonality. I suggested putting money together in stocks, real estate, and using profits appreciation to pay our collective debt as a first step to wealth building, kind of the Dave Ramsey approach, but as a group. Courtney, don't go off. Somehow the idea of an individual's money being used to pay debt that wasn't there seemed unfair to them.
Correct.
Everyone's choice to keep focusing on their own debt goals as individuals.
So
yeah, I'm gonna let Tracy go, and I'm gonna let Tracy go.
So we're not super big fans on this platform of Dave Ramsey, just because it's just very, very to me juvenile in the steps of wealth building. One of the things that I do like to tell people too, when it comes to wealth building and doing the first steps, I mean, even with crowdfunding and everything else, there's certain things that you got to do in your own house first before you can come together to build and be a part of a collective. If you are too debt heavy, and I am not, we are not equally yoked to be able to build a foundation. If you come in with a simple or similar level of leverage of debt, we can have a conversation and we can now start to build forward, because you might have something I lack, I might have something you lack, but at the same time, we can carry the same amount of weight. But if you have more weight than I do, we can never build anything solid. I'll just say that.
I'll just say this. I don't think Dave Ramsey's advice is wealth building advice, y'all. Just to keep it 100% funky. I think it's middle class and actually lower middle class advice. There's only one jewel I get from Dave Ramsey, and that's to save your first $1,000. Everything else, I think, is just blah. And it's really built to keep people in place, in my opinion, and it speaks to the lowest common denominator. But at the end of the day, you can't cookie cutter your way to wealth. Everybody's going to have their own individual process. Everybody's going to have their own God-given gifts, abilities, and talents. And if they don't spend time developing those, they're not going to be able to do anything. And that's just being honest. That's just being honest.
I definitely agree with that. I think Tracy makes a very valid point, is that you have to come to us with a certain foundation. You have to have like, okay, my debt is taken care of, or I'm dealing with my debt. And I push Dave Ramsey's idea a little bit further, and I like the snowball method about paying down debt. And I'm not necessarily paying down, all debt, but I mean, definitely consumer debt, that non-productive debt. I think that's a really good way to get rid of it, because I think at the end of the day is that, consumer debt, it's expensive. I mean, if you have a credit card that's carrying a 19% interest rate, like that, that is the APR actually, but that it has a burden along with it. So you spend $1,000 on a TV, and the next thing you know is that $1,000 comes up to be $1,300 because of that interest, and you're actually kind of building yourself into a hole. So getting rid of that as quickly as possible, I'm all for it. But once he kind of goes beyond that, I'm like, and I think even $1,000 as your baseline emergency, I think that's a little bit too little. I think honestly, I tell people at least $2,000 as your baseline, and I think honestly it probably should be more. But I think that's when people start to get scared. So I think a lot of it is getting your thought process together. But I think collectively paying down somebody else's debt, like I didn't get the benefits of whatever you spent that on, so why should I have to pay for it? But I think on the other side, when you're collectively building wealth, I think that's a different thought process, because you're saying, hey, we're all getting something and building something together, and we have the fruits of our labor there. But if you're paying down debt, the fruit is already there. You're just kind of like digging. So.
I will say this, and just to kind of put a period on this, I think under certain circumstances, it could make sense for, let's say, a collectively created corporation or LLC to potentially pay down somebody's debt, to position themselves to move harder and faster in a particular segment. Like, let's say if you had a partner that, debt was encumbered, they needed to unencumber it to be able to qualify for some kind of credit. Maybe this is just a hypothetical. That might be okay, but just individually on themselves, just paying down everybody's debt, I don't know. That's a little dicey.
But that's a whole leverage conversation.
Right.
If the debt makes more sense, leverage to pay it off, so we as a company or a brand can move forward, is something completely different. That conversation that Kahan was having makes sense in a family setting.
Mm-hmm.
And a husband, wife with children. Yes, we all need to collectively take care of this debt, because as a family, we have a similar goal. We have a plan, and it would benefit everyone included for this debt to be taken down. But when you start branching it out to maybe aunties, uncles, cousins, it gets a little dicey, because it's actually not really your household. So now people start feeling like, that debt don't really affect me. Should I pay it? And how are we all? What's the plan for moving forward? So I think it can get sticky, but personally, household-wise, yeah.
Gotcha. All right, everybody, listen, we're getting into Claude Anderson's Powernomics, the Black National Plan for Black America, or the plan for empowerment for Black America. Do us a favor, share this out with anybody who's interested in hearing some high-level conversation about moving us forward as a community to achieving more wealth, because the more wealth the Black community has, the more power we have, the more resources we have, the more leverage we have at the end of the day. Sorry about that, Jimmy. What were you saying?
I was going to say, Courtney made an excellent point about consumer debt versus just debt in general. Business Insider had a good article this week about Mark Zuckerberg and how he has like a $6 million home, and he like took all the cash out because the bank allowed him to have a mortgage of 1.5%, and he was of the opinion that that's free money. The interest rate is so low that I can take that money that was within the property and make more money investing it. So there were people arguing like, wow, you have paid off your Mark Zuckerberg, and he says that's free money. $6 million I could put to work. I know for a fact I can make more than 1.5%. So I just thought that was an interesting article that Business Insider just put out. But it's a difference between consumer debt and just saying debt overall.
Absolutely. And Mark Zuckerberg is very sophisticated in what he's doing and what his company's doing. I mean, Apple kind of did the same thing. I mean, it wasn't personal debt, but they kind of did the same thing. But I don't want to bore anybody, so we ain't got to go too deep into that. All right, so listen, for chapter 7, y'all, who's ready to jump into chapter 7? All right, but let's check in with these last couple comments real quick. Andre says Dr. Claude Anderson has a fish farm.
There you go, Maryland.
Yep. The wife says $40 Million Slave was a awesome read. I still haven't read it yet. I got to get caught up on it. Nicole says that is what baffled me about aquaponics. How do we use tilapia if the health department is telling us to stay away from tilapia? Ooh, I'm not sure about that.
It's just how it's formed. It's how it is whatever they put in the water is bad for you. The fish itself is fine.
Got you. All right. Don says ARK is buying that stock up. All right. None of the comments here are meant to be investment advice. Before you buy any investment, any stock, make sure you consult with an investment and tax advisor. Remember, past performance is not an indicator of future results, y'all. So I just want to be clear on that.
Fish, Kamari. Like, we really have to talk about some tilapia. Like, tilapia is actually one of the fish. It can be mass produced. It's kind of like the chicken of the sea. Like, you know how they used to call tuna the chicken of the sea, but it's like the chicken of the sea. It grows fast, and it actually can grow in captivity, but it actually doesn't have the omega-3s and omega-6s which is the rationale for everybody eating fish. It doesn't have that in a mass amount, and it actually has some chemicals, one of which is called dioxin, that can actually accelerate cancer. So tilapia is not the fish. You know, it works, but it really, like, there's a couple of articles that talk about it. There's one specifically in the New York Times, I think it was 2011, that talks about the problems with tilapia. Because personally, I was like, oh, it's a cheap, it's an easy fish. It actually doesn't have it doesn't have a fishy taste. Well, the fishy taste kind of, to a certain extent, not always, is indicative of some of the benefits that it has. And if you don't have that, then there really is no point in you eating it. So.
All right. Gotcha. All right. Adrian says, man, did you say that they feed fish chicken shit? That makes me happy with my decision to stop eating it. All right. But I will say this, Adrian, chickens eat chicken shit too sometimes. So
chickens eat chicken shit too.
You got to be careful.
Cows lick cow shit. I mean, come on.
Yeah. All right. So Demetrius says, I got it on deck. Shit. All right, Malik, hold on. Demetrius says, I got it on deck. Read with my book club. I guess everybody just wants to say shit tonight. So James Possible says, yes, you got to take care of your house first. I'm all about foundation first. Yeah, absolutely. You got to have foundation first. If you're building a weak foundation, whatever you build up will fall and crumble at some point, sometime. Dave Ramsey does nothing for me. He holds views that I cannot get behind. Plus, he often comes from a place of diminishing people. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll be honest, the place of diminishing people, if you ever notice, for the most part, any hot radio, which Dave Ramsey comes from, they tear people down. If you remember starting Buck Wild, he's the king of that, right? They tear people down because people like controversy. If you see it in reality shows, people like controversy. So anytime you can create tension in a media platform, it's usually a good thing. Mm-hmm. All right, Khan says, I'm not a Dave Ramsey fan either. The folks I was talking to were familiar with him somewhat. The idea of Tracy's point was with family, what it was to family. The debt amount was to set a goal. All right,
yeah, got you. I got your point, Khan, and I know your situation well, and sometimes it works, sometimes it don't.
Right. Yes, the fishy taste is part of the omega-3. Got you. Let's see. I eat salmon. And so do y'all say salmon or do y'all say salmon? I only eat salmon, and I'm trying to get off that soon.
No, man.
No L.
No L.
Oh, so we the bougie fish people eating. All right. This is part of why eggs sometimes have a fishy flavor. All right, cool. All right, so let's jump into chapter 7 real quick.
Hey, can I say one thing before you go there, please?
Come on, Malik.
I know, just real quick. It's important. I just want to go along with Tracy's comment about the equally yoked thing real fast. What I did, we don't have to cover it a lot, but I do want to say this. When my wife and I were taking each other serious, we did two things. We shared our, we took SDT, we shared that, and we shared our credit reports. And we reviewed, we opened them both together, we reviewed them both together, and we continued on. But that's for later conversation.
Well, actually, we probably should have a conversation about finances and relationships, or relationships and finance, and just kind of talk about that. I know every household kind of does it the way that works best for them, but some people don't have a clue at all. So that's probably an article or an episode we should do very, very soon. All right, so one more comment, and we'll get back to it. All right, has there been a show on the economics of Black love? Oh, you just said it, so there it is. That's the title, the show on the economics of Black love. There we go.
Next Sunday.
So Jimmy, what'd you say, Jimmy?
I said next Sunday. Thanks for helping us plan.
You know what? I'm with that. Is everybody with that? Everybody say aye if you're with it.
Aye.
All right, there it is, y'all. The audience has selected the topic for next week.
The economics of black love.
So excuse me, not episode, chapter
And that's
7.
the title too, right there. Economics of Black Love.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Chapter 7, group economics. So we just had the major presidential election. We've been talking a lot about economics, but it seems like a lot of times when we talk about economics as it relates to black people, we don't kind of go about it from any kind of particular framework. Here, Dr. Claude has a framework for us to think about economics.
You mean group politics?
Group politics. Group politics. So he has a way of kind of laying out a framework. And I feel like when I read through this, it comes from Malcolm X's ballot of the bullet to a certain degree. But who wants to start this one off?
I'll start. So, because I have
okay, go ahead.
Some memories / experiences with this, right? So, I wanted to talk about political action step number 7, which is the block vote based upon quid pro quo agreements between politicians, their parties, and black people, right? So, my grandmother was a ward leader when I was growing up, and she was a block captain, and she was very civically active. And my grandmother my neighborhood used to block vote. And so our politicians in our neighborhood were they were terrified of what my grandmother would do if they didn't do what she asked them to do, literally. And so I like that feeling because my neighborhood, when I was younger, was voted one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in the city. And it won the most beautiful block in the city 3 years in a row, right? In the middle of a drug war, when crack was at its height, the neighborhood where all the crack was being sold was voted as the most beautiful neighborhood in the city. Here's why. Because when politicians didn't do what my grandmother asked them to do or what they said they would do, they got voted out instantaneously. They got voted out on the next election cycle. Or she went above them and put political pressure on because my neighborhood voted as a block, which gerrymandering stopped. Which I won't talk about gerrymandering a lot in this, but the quid pro quo for political power is an actual thing, and we need to move toward that a lot more than we do. So that was the thing I took most from chapter 7. Got
you. Malik, what you got on chapter 7?
Yeah, man. So no, I actually did a video on this, man, right at the election when I said the big winner in the presidential election is black folk, is like seeing like how many like black folk really coming together now. If we could just come together for more than just say a Democrat or just vote only that way, we could get more done, man. And I watched like what Stacey Abrams, did in Georgia, was amazing. And one thing that caught my attention in reading about her is that 2 million people moved to Atlanta since 2018 till she lost her election, and 80% of them were black. So basically 1.6 million black people moved to Georgia, and that now you have all those new people that from all over the country, that can really affect change. And who knows what the politics of Georgia are, but collectively we see, and this is with only a small percentage of us voting, being disenfranchised in some places, people with felonies in some places can't vote. Even all of that being said, the black folk that stood in line and did that to do a mail-in vote in Pennsylvania, the black folk, the same thing in Nevada, same thing in Georgia, are the ones that kind of tipped the election. And also can't forget Milwaukee, and really tipping the election for Joe Biden. So there is the power in voting, but I will say we really do need to do more galvanizing. But one last thing I'm gonna say on this is, in the age of social media, where they bring up any mistakes from 20 years ago, that's going to really deter any people that might want to be leaders or organizers to really, step out front, because I am not the perfect citizen now that I was 20 years ago, and so some of the past history will catch up. But once again, no, we voting together, things can definitely happen, and also real quick, Philadelphia, we see what happens when things are divided. We got Kenny, where it should have been, what was it, Dwight Evans and Anthony whatever running. They split the vote, and then here come Kenny up the middle.
Anthony Hardy Williams.
And right, Hardy Williams, Anthony Williams. Splitting the vote, and then then we got James Kenny. Neither one of the black candidates won.
Well, no, Dwight wasn't in the last election. He was in the one before that.
I'm talking about the one before that one.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the last one. So it was Kenny versus Anthony Hardy Williams, and
yeah, I know, but Kenny was already the incumbent. So I mean,
yeah, I'll leave that one alone.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just read the chapter again. So again, chapter 7 is practicing group politics. Transform weakness into power by getting others to play with cards that your group deals. All right. So do y'all understand that? Transfer weakness into power by getting others to play with cards that your group deals. So he's talking about reshaping the deck, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Courtney, what do you have on chapter 7?
So what I really liked about chapter 7 is that there was a quote that I'm just trying to grab it. We talked about it, I think it was in chapter 6, but I think the quote is applicable across the board. It's on page 187. And he says, referring to, it was a conversation between a Cuban refugee and a black man. And he said, I'm actually specifically Dr. Claude, he said, we are not like black people who always march, demonstrate, then beg. We demand what we want. And I think that is the idea, or should be the idea, of our political agenda. Is that even in this conversations that we've had over the last, 8 months about the civil unrest and the police brutality that we've been dealing with since, the dawn of time here, we've been having those same conversations and not really much has changed. So we have to demand the change that we want. We have to present the policies that we want. And we also need to vote as a block. Because every politician, when it comes to benefit their interests, they come after us. They're like, well, what can we do with the black vote? But we never really get anything back in return. And he says that here. And I also think there's a couple of really good things here. And he says, know your competitors on page 192. He said, to promote its own self-interest, a group should select only allies who will support the group and not benefit from its demise. And I think at the end of the day is that people only come to the black community with their handout, but they're not actually given in exchange for value. We're not getting something on the other side. And Corey already talked about this. So just talking about how we can create our own political agenda and actually push it forward. And going back to the idea of wealth is wealth and power follow the numbers. And we have the numbers. It's just we have to get our wealth and our power together. And we also have to kind of stop allowing people to fracture us. And I think that kind of goes to the point about the block, is that we need to have a political block, and we don't need to follow any particular party, because none of the parties, as Dr. Claude talks about, he said, we've never had enough political power within any of those parties. Clearly, there's been no visible and direct connection between Blacks supporting a national political party and receiving benefits from the party. Now, we got on Malik before the election talking about the Democrats, but I think this is a conversation to have now, is that no, we've always gotten on board, we've gotten down with the program, and then at the end of the day, when we come to ask for something, anything, they tell us that we can't do it, or they give us some rhyme reason why it can't be done, but we didn't give you a rhyme or reason why you couldn't have our vote. So it has to be reciprocal. It really
Got you.
Bait and switch.
So Tracy, what you got on this?
So I'm going to pull out my book. Some of the things that I really liked about chapter 7, definitely I feel like the political process, especially in the United States of America, is very integral, and it was very divisive as to how we are and what we don't have in this country as a race to begin with. But one of the things that I really, really liked that wasn't mentioned in chapter 7 was the discussion of the comparison with Indians in this country and African Americans.
And when you say Indians, are we talking American natives or are we talking actual Indians?
We're talking, it looks like Indians living on the reservation as non-citizens. And they were excluded from both groups from certain rights and privileges. And Blacks were mentioned 4 times and Indians twice in the Constitution. But there were parts about the reparations, that the path that Indians took, that we as African Americans can track. and there was a few summarizing things. It was on page 208 and 209. The discussion was more about Indians convinced whites to invest resources to preserve and reinvent Indian culture. And he says Blacks should secure public and private funding for Black Holocaust and cultural museums. Like, think about that when you think about your African American museums, all those things. How are they funded? Who is making sure that they stay open and that history is preserved and that information is always there for people to see because of the part that the United States played in the culture? Other conversation was regarding the, where is it? The Indians drafted their own civilized tribes constitution and formed their own governing councils within their community. He's saying, Dr. Claude saying, Blacks should adopt a national Black empowerment plan and form their own political party. I think that speaks to the conversation of what we were just talking to about how we were kind of mad at Malik, aka David Ruffin, for talking about the Democratic Party during the election because we need an agenda passed and we need to get it done quickly. So let's not be divisive. But now that we've got some things under control, we do need to start talking more about these parties that will really vote on our interests alone, whether they're political PACs or what have you. There needs to be something that is specifically dedicated to just discussing the needs in the Black community, and they should be at a seat at the table with the discussion, negotiating the terms.
I would agree. Just a point of clarity, right? So when Tracy was saying Indians, she was actually talking about Native Americans. Dr. Claude Anderson's old school, so he uses the old school terminology of Indians, just in case if anybody got lost in that.
Indigenous.
Well, you see both. You get indigenous, and then you see Native American. So I don't know which one is PC these days. All I know is it's not Indian. So,
It's just how I feel about a person. That's all. It's not PC.
Okay. All right. So I think I got everybody. Everybody went through. I'll share what I thought.
No,
right. So
you didn't give me. You
didn't get Jim.
I ain't get you, Jimmy. My bad, Jimmy. Come on, Jimmy. Give us what you got.
I'll be very I'll be very brief though, because in my notes, all it says is a Ballad of the Bullet. So for those who have never heard the Ballad of the Bullet, I just want you to please listen to that. And as a matter of fact, if you have any of the streaming services for music, it's on YouTube Music, it's on Tidal, it's on Spotify. I'm not sure if it's on Apple Music, but I'm pretty sure it's on the other ones there as well.
We should do a watch.
And I just want to I want to echo also what Courtney said about letting people fracture us. I thought that was a powerful point. Courtney's on fire tonight. But the other note I have is like he talks about self-interest and how we have to think about our self-interest. A lot of times we get caught up in our feelings when it comes to specific candidates or specific parties, and we don't think about self-interest. And Ian made a point within the chat from you. This one say is very powerful because I've seen this hand. But that's why economics is important, because if you have the money to fund the candidate that supports your vision, you can give them money to those greedy ward leaders, as Wayne calls them in the chat. But yeah, so that's all I had on it anyway. Ballad of the Bullet, please. If you guys have never heard the Ballad of the Bullet, just go check that out.
No, what I was saying is, I think we should do a watch party, a Black Wealth Project watch party, Ballad of the Bullet.
I'd be all for that.
All for it, and we should also do a show on it as well.
Yeah,
so I think, we'll get to that real quick too. All right, so I'm kind of
create a room around it too.
Correct.
I'm kind of
yes.
I'm kind of piggybacking off what Jimmy said, right? But I want to read directly from the book. So we're on page 89. So it says the new Black political orientation. All right, the new Black political orientation must be rooted in the politics of gaining resources rather than the politics of morality and establishing civil rights. Those who own and control resources have both rights and might. All right, therefore, based upon our own group self-interest, we should use the political process to redistribute America's resources, redress historical injustices, committed against Black people and improve the social economic conditions within the Black community. So that one really stuck out at me. I mean, the whole book really stuck out at me. It's definitely powerful. Hope all of y'all read this. Hope all of y'all own a copy of this. Please get a copy of it if you don't own a copy of it, and also talk about it with your family and your children. Now, going to Dr. Claude's kind of credibility in this, the man was also an administrative advisor in the Carter administration. So this man has worked at the presidential level, the executive branch level in terms of politics. So he's not just pulling something out of his butt that he heard somebody say. He talks about stories where there's certain senators in certain states that needed some things. His response was, well, what are you going to do for Black folks? And he said he got many Black folks hired in Florida and in other places that were able to do a lot of work in terms of Black wealth creation. So
can I read a segment real quick in the book?
Go ahead, Malik.
So before I start, I do want to say I'm already disappointed in Joe Biden. Before he even took office, he's talking about a $10,000 student loan forgiveness. The whole election of $50,000. This bastard didn't even take office yet. He's talking about 10,000. But
backtracking.
I digress. I mean, we got to hold him accountable.
Backpedaling like goddamn Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
All right, what's the part of the book you want to read, Malik?
Hey, so real quick, right? It's on page 216, right? It says the Democratic Party is in a conflicted situation. It is seeking middle-class white votes while still depending on the Black vote, even though the party is moving in a more conservative white direction. Both major political parties have demonstrated unwillingness to implement a Black agenda that provides material benefits to Black people. So the choice Black should exercise is to pull out of both parties and start an independent national Black party that practices group-based politics of gaining resources. I just wanted to read that segment out loud. Now, I will say that a national party independent, I don't know. That's heavy lifting, like a lot of billions of dollars. But the Working People Party already proved they could win in Philadelphia, and that could be done all over the country in local elections.
I don't necessarily agree with that for a lot of reasons, right? It's historically documented that Black folks turn out in presidential elections. There's an election every 6 months now. These DA races that are coming up, these the other judge races that are coming up are very, very crucial, and we don't participate in those, sadly. I'm also not really a big fan of us creating our own party. Not that we don't have the intelligence, but right now we don't have the unity. And everything that Dr. Claude really talks about is unity. For us to do these things, it really takes unity.
He started in chapter 1 by saying it's all built on culture.
Right.
And we have it. And when I say culture, we don't have cultural competencies where if you don't meet those cultural competencies, then you're not part of the cultural machinery. You know what I mean?
We agreed on that.
Huh?
We agreed on that. I think that was last episode.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We don't have, but if everything is built, if the foundation is cultural competency, then none of this stuff is going to happen until we build the foundational piece.
Right. But what I was going to say is that until we start building that piece, Corey, that unity, to me, it doesn't make sense to build out our own party. At that point, in the interim, right, I think it makes sense to really get entrenched in whichever party, right? Because y'all know I'm not pro-party. I don't care about the Democrats. I don't care about the Republicans. As I said before, they're both trash. But who can we get alignment with? Who can we give our agenda with? Because I also hate the saying of this party hasn't created our agenda. We should be creating our own agenda and saying this is what we want. And if you don't give it to us, there will be repercussions and pain to be distributed to all of y'all.
Right. What I'm saying is that
at that point, right?
What I'm saying is the Working People Party, they already won. They're in office. Like they exist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have a seat here in Philadelphia, and it depends on like Kendra Brooks. It depends on how she legislates. If she can coalesce around her, then there'll be more Working People Party in our local politics. Now they have a foundation to build on. They can raise capital.
Yeah, but that's one city council seat here in the city of Philadelphia. I mean, when you look at the
journey of 1,000 miles, man.
Right,
Yeah.
but when you look at, that's what I'm talking about, the interim, right? So what are we doing in the interim? The majority of the people in city council, we're talking locally here in Philly, is Democrats. So there is really no movement unless we're able to move that system right there as well. And I do believe block voting, block economics will all help to move all those things. But again, it takes culture, it takes unity.
But I think I want to bring up this point about political action step number 12. He talks about adopting a public code of conduct for group accountability. And I think that's something that we really need to focus on, to Corey's point about culture, is that we've had at some point in our history here in the United States, we did have some type of like rule. And they weren't like, rules that were written down, but they were kind of cultural norms. It's I was talking about this the other day with somebody, I don't remember who. But we were talking about how, there was a rule that you don't get at women and children. Like you guys, if two gangsters are having a fight or whatever, I don't know, we'll call them gangsters for today. But they were two men were having a fight. Is that one of the things that you did not do is you didn't go after the women or the children. Like that was the rule, but that rule has actually gone out the window. And I think again, we have to kind of point people out who are not adhering to the cultural norms. We have to, like, he kind of gives a list of, denounce blasts who displayed inappropriate behavior, staged public protests, and labeled them as Sambos. Like, we have to kind of have that conversation. And I personally like Kanye West. Like, I like him as a rapper, but he acted a doggone fool for the last 2 years. You gotta go. You have to go. And it's not that you did one thing that was problematic. It's that you've done a series of things that were problematic. And I feel like those are the things of like, listen, you're not like falling in line with the agenda. You're doing everything, but we can't really mess with you right now. And I think really sending out those messages to say, hey, we have a real problem. I think that's kind of holding people accountable and holding people to a standard. And that's across the board, whether you're a celebrity or you're a politician, is that, hey, you violated this cultural norm, you have to be voted out. Like how Corey was talking about. You didn't do what you said you were going to do, what you were supposed to do, you got to go.
What that brought up a thought though, real fast. That brought up a thought because it's difficult, right? Because our people are lynched in so many different spaces. A lot of times we don't want to be the one to call out our own folks. I mean, even within this conversation we have here, we talked about something earlier, but we didn't want to name names and really get into it for various reasons. And that's why that's kind of difficult. But I do understand that the need for us to do that. So we have to. I'm just thinking it through as you say that. We have to figure out a way to be able to call those folks out, but make sure that I guess we have our all of our information correct before we start to do so, because our folks are just like, thrown out there by so many other people. It's difficult for a lot of us to kind of like, throw them under the bus, so to speak.
No, I agree. Let's check in with the audience real quick. So where did we leave off at? So many comments. All right, we're not going to be able to get through all the comments. I'll try to get the ones that speak to this topic the most. All right, so it's absolutely require a big discussion on relationships and finance, right? We're doing that. What a story on block voting, excuse me. Abrams says register people to vote since her youth. She's a remarkable woman, absolutely. These greedy world leaders of Philadelphia, world leaders go with the biggest bag over the community. That happens a lot. That's how you end up with the last Philadelphia judicial election, one black judge elected out of 7 seats. And practicing local group politics is vital, which I agree. Do we confess our people or confuse our people by telling them voting for the president don't hold any weight? I've had people who carried the no vote, no. So all right, so he's talking about voting locally versus nationally. We need to do both. It doesn't make sense not to vote nationally. I would submit that the people who are saying that really don't understand politics nor the process. And again, a lot of people say that. And a lot of people feel that they understand politics, but most of these people have not worked on a campaign, volunteered for a campaign, and if they have volunteered on a campaign, they were just kind of going to get coffee, and they haven't studied it either, right? So I would say we need to start studying it more and then listening to some of the people that we trust who are in power. James says ballot or the bullet, not the bully, the bullet.
The ballot or the bullet.
All right, so Adrian says, I noticed here in Chicago that there's a movement by blacks to disconnect from the Democratic Party, seeing that many of the elected officials on the local level are Democrats, and we're rarely given another party option. But has put a sour taste in the mouths of us who see nothing but blight in their neighborhoods. Yes, the Democrats have pushed many positive policies, but it looks like there is more interest in improving Hispanic neighborhoods and not ours. There's more interest in that. So I would say something to that, right? Because a lot of times I think we get dismayed that everything's going to happen overnight. Former President Obama just did an interview on the Breakfast Club, and he says 8 years, his office, him being in office for 8 years, can't change 200 years of racism, which is true. The other issue I see, right? So that's an issue of timing. The other issue I see is we're not working collectively. Hispanics or Latinos, a lot of them have an agenda. They do a lot of things together. Where's the Black agenda? So before we can start to criticize people, we had to do a lot of internal work. It's my opinion to even hold anybody to a standard.
I'd like to ask Adrian one quick question.
Is she from 63rd?
Adrian, are you from 63rd?
Oh, come on, man. Come on, man. Let's get to this next topic, please. About creating a political agenda, I only had one comment. Ice Cube provides the best example of my point. Cube did not take the time to consider those with boots on the ground actively engaged in the policy process. Reese Calvert went through the CWBA point by point and made it very clear that it was inadequate. Roland Martin paired Cube with Alicia Garza, and Cube totally dissed Garza. By the way, so Alicia Garza is one of the founders of BLM, Black Lives Matter. So yeah, it's been well documented that Cube didn't do any work to partner and work with any of the people that are already doing political work in the Black community. So I do have a side eye for Cube. I won't label him as Kanye, but I am wondering, like, why would he even do all this? Anybody else have any takes on this?
Yeah, I have a take. I have a take on that. Cube was trying to take action, and he got out in front of a speeding train. Basically, he got out in front of a speeding train and didn't think about the consequences and repercussions of the actions that he was taking. And because he's in a position to take action, and his whole career is built on taking action, and he was looking at the situation that we were in, and he did what he would do. Like, yo, if you want my vote, give me something for my vote. Here's what I want for my vote, and these are what people told me that they want for their vote. Now, like, what's the name? Mr. Possible was saying he didn't get enough of the collective voices of the people who were doing the work and had boots on the ground before he came out with the plan that he came out with. And so I think Cube is getting a bad rap. I really do. I don't think that he thought it out all the way, but he was taking the action steps that a person who's frustrated with the system and the shit that's going on would take. So I think he's getting a bad rap.
Hold on, Courtney.
Without a mute, I done muted myself. I think that's fair. Corey, I think that's a fair point. But I think one of my biggest concerns is that we have a time and place issue. Is that we had somebody in there who was we can't confuse people before. Like, if we wanted to have that type of agenda, we can have that conversation. As soon as Trump got in, we knew that Houston, there was a problem. We knew there was a problem. And instead of 4 years ago dealing with these issues, right before the election, after we seen that, people who have been affected most adversely by the coronavirus are Black people. And I'm not even going to say people of color. I'm saying Black people have been most adversely affected by the coronavirus. And it's a direct result of the mismanagement and mishandling by the White House of the virus. It's like, no, you got to go. So of course, now you want to add this level of confusion. I get that you have a problem. And I don't think that any of his points the big overarching points were invalid, but it just wasn't the time or the place. And I really think it's super important that we understand time and place. So now I want Cube to have that same vitriol and that same passion right now to say, Biden administration, let's get this popping. Let's have this conversation. And from my understanding, and I don't know this to be completely fact, is that Kamala actually wanted to speak with him and he turned her down. So my problem is like, hey, what is the point of you doing this? Like, yeah, you want to take action, but when you're trying to have somebody really trying to have a conversation with you, you don't really want to have a conversation to actually move the agenda forward. Like, come on, like, it seems like a power play. But that's
the other side of that story is that when he wanted to have a conversation with them, they told him get out of here, and which is why he had the conversation with the other side. And so when whatever, like when the back and forth is like two third graders telling the same story, telling two sides of the same story, right? So
I just want to comment.
I don't want to get involved in that piece of it. Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying I thought that he got done dirty too because he was taking action, and I see a lot of people that criticize him that have never tried to organize or do anything, right? And we need people that take action. Now, with that being said, you do have to get more people that are already on the ground that are doing the work to and collaborate with them. So I understand that, but I just have a hard problem with the way he was treated within the community because, I mean, if you look at his entire body of work, he's helped our people put food on the table, lots and lots of them. He's actually done things like he has tangible work that we can point to, and not just people typing on the keyboard that I see going at his neck. So I don't like to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. So I think he got done dirty in that way, but I do see the problem with the way he handled it. But got to build further.
He did something more revolutionary than 99% of people in the world. He employed black people. Period. And so when you coming at this man's neck talking about what he did and what he didn't do, not you specifically, but I'm talking about the general populace. Like, he's doing revolutionary shit. He put black people in position to feed other black people. So, like, yes, like they say he's just an entertainer. He's not just an entertainer. He's somebody. He created the big three. He created, situations for people to put food on other people's table. He's not just some roly poly that just woke up and decided to get involved. He's been involved.
So when I look at this and I scratch my head about it, right? And Corey, you're right. Jimmy, you're right. That's why I can't lump Cuban with Kanye West, because he has a track record of doing work for the black community. But all that turn for him going positive started with the Nation of Islam, started with Khalid Muhammad, started with Minister Farrakhan. And he's been in league with other people who are very positive minded and understand it. So the question I always have is, why now? Why didn't you start this instead of 6 months ago, 6 years ago? Right. And I'm not trying to truly question his motives, but you got to understand that these same situations were here before. He could have talked to anybody to know that if what we really need from our entertainers a lot of times is organization building. And none of them seem to do that, because Diddy had the whole vote or die thing, but he hasn't been organizing the whole time. And so that's like a natural step in progression that none of them have done. And it just makes me scratch my head like, why now?
I think that's one of my biggest concerns is we got all these chiefs and no Indians. Like, everybody wants to be in charge. Everybody wants to be the person to talk to the man. They want to be the person to make the deal. They want to be the person that said, I spoke up. But nobody wants to organize so that way everyone can put together their collective ask and have a full list that itemizes everybody's needs, and then designate someone to sit down to be able to negotiate at the table. And I feel like this is also part of the group economics and the political conversations that are in this book. It's like everyone can't pull the coattail of the president or the president-elect or who is looking to be possibly in power and say, ooh, I want to jump in front of you and add my piece for what I need and what I see from my tunnel vision of what I think my entire community needs. Because that's a discussion that should be had. I remember when Cube sat down, Tamika Mallory and a few other people were all over social media like, yo, somebody tell Cube to call me, because we have already set something up and he's almost derailing it by standing alone, saying that he speaks for some of these principles of which we've already created a plan. And it's mostly because not only are they not talking to everybody before they go reach out and do the ask, but there isn't a collective protocol of, if we want to talk to somebody and we want to do something, move politically, because there's a new president that's about to be elected, there should be a pact. There should be a pact that says, if y'all want something, y'all got to come to us first. We will itemize it, we will detail it, and then we will agree on what we will present. And it will be one presentation, not a Kanye, not an Ice Cube, not a 50 Cent, not anybody. It will be one. And it'll be well thought out. It will have details, it will have action items, and you all will be represented.
But you know what that takes, right, Tracy?
I do.
That takes unity. That takes unity and coordination. Exactly. And it's sad. It's sad that happens.
But it's more than that. It's love. I think Jimmy and Corey say it all the time. It takes love.
I agree.
Like, you don't, when you love someone and you love your fellow man and woman, you don't put yourself above the collective. You say, what is in the best interest of all of us? This may benefit me, but does it hurt my neighbor? Does it hurt somebody that I love and that I care about? And too often are we out there doing things because it works for us, but it may not and does not work for our brother or our sister. And it's just like, we have to be really careful about that. Now, I appreciate that idea has been cultivated amongst us for the last 400 years, because that's the way that you separate a people, is that you divide and conquer. So we take those things and people use those ideas against us now. But when you know better, you do better. So we have to do better. And when you're in these positions of power, when you're in these positions of influence, we have to be careful about the things that we do, and we have to be calculated. Now, Cuba has done some awesome work, and I don't want to put that. I don't want to say like, oh, I don't like what he did here, so I'm against everything he's done. No, he's done great work. So I don't want anybody to say that, oh, they're against Cube or Courtney's against Cube. Because I don't want anybody else, my thoughts are different than anybody else. But I want to be very clear is that, listen, we all have to be in this for everyone else when it comes to these types of political agendas. And I just feel like when we don't do it that way, things get messed up. And especially when people are trying to tap you on the shoulder, like someone says, your slip is showing, and people just like, oh no, I'm good. Like, no, that's not love. That's not doing this collective work for all of us.
Gotcha. All right. So James Possible says Courtney's on fire. All right. Silva Felice. Hope I'm saying your name right. I don't know what you're pointing to. Justice Watch without attorney Zulu.
It's a bot.
Yeah, it's a bot.
It's a bot.
Oh, that's a bot. Okay, thank you. No doubt Cube has made a difference. Yeah, absolutely. So Karan says, yo, y'all just put me on the gold. I just jumped on Spotify and downloaded Malcolm X, Fred Hampton. Yep. Yeah. A lot of those speeches are on there.
Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah, a lot of it's there. And a lot of it's, and the stuff that's not on the streaming platforms are actually on YouTube, some way, somehow, a lot of times. Fair point. Why now? All right, Karan says, look up Q Kamara. He's been locked in and maybe more locally and state-wise, but he's been tapped in. Where? Tell me where. Point me in the direction. It takes love. Willie Lynch led us saw division and mistrust. Now, I know there's a couple audience members that hate the mention of Willie Lynch because Willie Lynch was not a real person.
Right.
It's been deemed to be a fictional character and a made up story. However,
it's like
a lot of stuff that rings true there.
Yeah, it's an allegory. Yeah. Basically, is like, all right, this is what we should do to disenfranchise these people, and we should continually do these things to disenfranchise these people, and this is the outline to do it. And we just put a name on it, named Willie Lynch.
Correct. Well, so just use Willie Lynch when put air quotes around it. That's all.
Right. Yeah, but I've had some debates around that, but I'm like, some of the stuff they did is in there, then that's produced these effects on black folks. All right, so Wayne Terry says we have to trick some of us into doing good for themselves. Yeah, but I don't know how long that works, though. All right, Demetrius says, love what Cube did, and Cube did not do it alone. Cube worked with Dr. Claude Anderson on his plan, as well, which most of the others have not. What he put together is the amount of time, and Honorable would love to see what a more published plan looks like.
Yeah.
A more polished plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, in California, LA County. Well, yeah, in LA County, he's from LA, right? He's from South Central, but he's putting on something nationally, right? And Cube has reached nationally, so he can start organizing nationally or help to organize nationally. I mean, I think Tracy said it best. We got to get to a point where we could all kind of form like Voltron, put our ideas and plans and put our money in, and then move forward from there.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take. That's my take. All right, got it. Okay, so thank you all for joining us for that part of the segment. We're going to move on to our Black Icon of the Week. But tell us in the comments, what do you think about Powernomics? I always get the subtitle wrong again. Powernomics, the national plan to empower Black America. Are you going to buy this book if you don't have it? Are you going to share it with folks? Get people to read this book. I think it's a great framework for us to start moving together.
Facts.
All right. So Corey has our Black Icon of the Week this week. This one is fire. Tell us about who you got, Corey.
Well, I originally was going to do Don Cornelius, right? Because Don Cornelius, like, he was like the soundtrack to our childhood, right?
Absolutely.
He was. And you want to talk about employing black people and helping black folks get recognition and notoriety. The show Soul Train, it was in syndication for 25 years. And so when you talk about black icons and people who put other people in position to, when other people wouldn't give them a chance or their music wasn't going to be seen anywhere but in their local market, Don Cornelius put artists in position to get in the places where they never would have been. And so that's why I chose the icon Don Cornelius.
Corey, I thought you switched. You said
I did. I switched to. I was going to do, Malcolm X, because we were talking about the Ballad of the Bullet, and so we can go Malcolm, because we can do 10. There's icons everywhere. Listen.
All right. So listen now. We're gonna do
Malcolm
something.
X.
Live, right?
We can do El Haj Malik Casabaz. We can do. Go ahead. You do it.
No. We gonna do both, right? Ain't no need splitting hairs. They're both great. They both did great works. So we got Malcolm X on the board now. So talk about Malcolm, and I'll come back to Cornelius real quick.
So man, Malcolm is his own show, man. What y'all doing, man?
Yeah, you're right. I'm gonna say this, right? Like Jimmy said, the Ballad of the Bullet is where we need to start with our economic and political process. He is the after. To me, him and Marcus Garvey, together with their idealisms and ideas, because a lot of the people who came after him are Garveyites.
Malcolm was a Garveyite, actually.
Huh?
Malcolm was actually a Garveyite too. His parents.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, because his family was involved in it. So I get it. But what I'm saying is that his impact is still being felt 60 years after his death. And so it's very few people who still have an impact with their words and actions 60 years after they've passed. And so with that, I'll say that he is an icon. So I'll leave some, like I said, I like to leave meat on the bone for the rest of the people. So if anybody
we need
else
a whole Malcolm show, man. We need a whole Malcolm show.
We do.
We need a whole Malcolm show. We need a whole Garvey show. I think we need a whole Du Bois show. I mean, there's a lot, man. There's a lot of people we can cover.
Yeah.
Don Johnson just said he's reading a new Malcolm X biography, and the detail's amazing. All right, which one is that?
We need a whole show on Stedman Graham.
Y'all got jokes, man. Maybe you have a joke.
No, y'all laughing, the boy's a hero of mine, man. Y'all can laugh all y'all want to, man.
Oh, and another thing, I bought a sweatshirt for my man Malik and them.
Oh,
okay, I appreciate that.
Listen, they sent me the wrong size and the wrong color, so this joint barely fit over my. Listen, it don't even fit on my left shoulder. They sent me a small dog. My boobies extra large. This joint don't even fit on my shoulder. So my son will be wearing this joint. I would have put it on tonight the same way Jim put on the sweatshirt, to put on for the crew. But this joint don't even fit over my head. So I'm going to show love. But next time
I gotta get off Teespring, man. That's Teespring for.
Yeah, that's definitely Teespring. But I did show love, but they ain't show it back.
All right, well that's great, man. Corey got a piece of merch from Malik. Jimmy got a piece of merch from me. Next we got to get some merch from Courtney and some merch from Tracy. Tracy, you got some merch?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got merch. Who else got merch? Courtney got merch. I know Courtney had merch.
Tracy got merch.
All right,
you got merch. Hey, what's up
right now? Then.
Yeah. I need those links.
I'm about to send it to Corey so he can put it in the group chat. But it's
I got merch. My course came out last week. I got merch.
Yeah, man.
All right, so listen, everybody. We appreciate you all being here. Jimmy, appreciate you buying the merch. Corey, appreciate you buying Malik's merch. I appreciate you all from being here and bringing your wisdom, smarts, knowledge and education as well. Salutes to the audience for hanging in there with us every week. Listen, next week, the economics of Black love, baby. That's what we're going to be talking about. So put y'all comments in and make sure y'all share this out. Let's make this our best show and our biggest show ever next Sunday, 7 p.m., y'all. Everybody have a great start of the week and do something great, y'all. And chime in back with us when y'all do it. All right, everybody. Have a great week. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Love.